National Arnold Equality Rules. I'm actually a university student studying at York University. My question is to you, I looked most recently at this most recent provincial election and see that there was a low voter turnout. And my question to you is, how do you encourage more young people like myself to get out and vote? And I know social media plays a major role in that, but being able to connect, and obviously it's a major thing to connect with young people and getting them out to vote. So what's your plan to do that coming election?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to understand as politicians, but just as citizens, is that young people get a bad reputation for being disengaged or apathetic and not particularly interested in politics. And sometimes it's true, but for me it's a reflection not of young people, but of politics. Because you talk to young people these days and they're more interested, more engaged in the big issues the world is facing, whether it's poverty or environment or social justice or human rights. They're active in local community organizations. They're taking a stand on various issues, contributing to various causes. Young people care deeply about the future. They just don't feel all too often that politics is a useful way for them to get involved and actually make a difference. So what I'm very much focused on is giving space for young people to be heard, to participate in the political process, to talk about issues that matter to them, talk about, yes, tuition fees and the capacity to find jobs in the future and pay for their education. But also talk about issues around copyright and net neutrality, and bring young people's expertise as they see the world they're growing up in to bear, because the kind of thinking that young people bring forward, which is almost automatically more long-term because they're thinking about the rest of their life, whereas so many of us as adults are think of the long-term as just an extension of the short term, because we have mortgages and kids' dentist bills and promotions and responsibilities that prevent us from really imagining a better world or a different world than what we have. So for me, my message is constantly one of encouraging young people to step up, to get involved, to pay attention, because there's no question if young people turned out and voted to the 80% that our seniors vote at instead of the 30-35% of 18 to 25-year-olds vote traditionally, we'd have a much different, and I dare say, better government than the one we have right now. Thank you. Yes?
In the last election, you were not the leader. I know a lot of ethno-cultural communities did not pay much heed to the parties or the federal parties. As your role as the leader now, what is the party doing to attract ethno-cultural communities and to get them more involved in the Liberal Party of Canada?
I think there's two ways of doing that. First of all, one of the things that has always been at the core of the Liberal Party is an understanding that one of the things that makes us incredibly strong and lucky as Canadians is that we're this one place in the world that has figured out how to be strong, not in spite of our differences, but because of them. That we are defined not by language or religion or skin color or history or culture or prominence. We are defined as Canadians because we all share common values. Values of openness, respect, compassion, willingness to work hard, a desire to be there for each other, a search for opportunity for justice. These are values that countries around the world aspire to, but we're the only country that actually defines being a Canadian, makes our national identity about those values, so that regardless of where people are from, they can be full participants in being Canadian and be fully proud of all the cultural identity and uniqueness that they bring to it. That's the extraordinary success of multiculturalism, and the success, on top of that the world needs so much more of. Whether we're talking about the oppression of Muslim minorities by the Sri Lankan government these days, whether you're talking about the challenges that minorities have in Pakistan or in Europe, there is a need to respect diversity as a source of strength for a society and not weakness. And that is a model that Canada can play, and that's a model that immigrant communities in Canada need to fully be engaged in and valued through. But the other issue that I think is extremely important to all Canadians, not just to newer Canadians, is the question of immigration. This government has done a masterful job of talking about immigration in a positive way without actually doing anything on immigration. From cuts to refugee health care, to slashing family reunification, to an overexploitation of and an abuse of the system of temporary foreign workers. We have a government that has broken all the promises, the premise upon which Canada was shaped, that people could come here from any part of the world and not just become workers, but become community builders and nation builders. And that's what has made Canada so incredibly successful over the past years. So when we get up, as we have almost every day over the past week, and ask our immigration minister, Chris Alexander, to tell us how many Syrian refugees we've accepted into Canada. Because if you remember last year, a year and a half ago, Canada's big response to the Syrian crisis was, we are the country that draws in refugees from around the world. We get refugees. We're going to be a place where Syrian refugees can come and build a new life. Well, how many refugees has Canada invited in from Syria? The minister won't say. Or he can't say. So either he's not qualified for his job and doing a terrible job at it, or else he's so embarrassed because the number is so low that he doesn't want to admit it. This government has done nothing for immigration, and it's time that we had a government that understands how important it is for the future of our country.
What will your government be doing?
We've committed to turning around the approach on family reunification, understanding again that family reunification is more than just a drag on the Canadian economy. It's a plus. Allowing communities to have the families together, allowing people to come to Canada to find jobs and bring their families with them is how you build a stronger country. We're going to turn around this approach on cutting down on refugees and understanding that Canada can and must draw in vulnerable people from around the world, not just because it's the right thing to do, but traditionally, if many of us think back over the generations, the people who come here from war-torn areas and areas of conflict traditionally are so enthused and so positively inclined towards this country that has welcomed them that they worked incredibly hard to contribute to this country. This is good for our economy and it's good for our future. And making a much better, more open system of immigration is the future that this country needs.